Hi, I'm Hazel. It's Saturday today, which makes it time to sit down and catch up on the WoW news of the week, what I have been up to, and answer some of your questions. This week, we actually got some news, with the big headliner being that we now know when Season 4 is coming. Well, actually, there's a couple headliners, but that's the one I decided to put first. The 4th season of Shadowlands will start August the 2nd, week of the August 2nd reset, so 1 month away. You have 4 weeks left to complete your end of Season 3 goals. So that means that if you do not yet have this particular color of Keystone Master Mount and you want to get it, you got a month left to do that. You got to get to 2500 Mythic Plus rating. Similarly, if you want the Ahead of the Curve achievement or Cutting Edge achievements for Sepulchre of the first ones, 4 weeks left on that. Bear in mind that the Carcinized Xeresteed mount, the Ahead of the Curve mount, will continue to be available in Season 4. It's just the achievements that are going away. It's also kind of a deadline on getting the current season Vicious mount, so the Vicious War Croaker will be available for 1 more month before it gets rolled over to the War Lupine. The Vicious mounts don't go away forever, but it does take a while before the current expansion ones hit the vendors, so if you want the War Croaker, then now's the time to go do it. On the topic of the raid, there have been some pretty substantial nerfs to Sepulchre of the first ones, just wave after wave after wave of nerfs to help guilds finish their Ahead of the Curve and Cutting Edge and just kind of get through the raid while it's still current. So if you guys have been hitting a wall lately, then hopefully those should help. I'm glad they gave 4 weeks of notice. There was a world where they could have only given 2, and this is a little nicer. I'm still finishing up my Vicious mount. That's on my list of things to do, so I'm glad to have a little bit of extra time. With that release date in mind, and Dragonflight coming out on or before December the 31st of 2022, so sometime this year, that means that the Season 4 duration is looking to be somewhere in kind of the 4, maybe 5 month range, because that would put Dragonflight in November or December, and it would be really weird if Dragonflight was somehow ready earlier than like November, so we're looking at like a 4-ish month Season 4. Another headline this week is the upcoming patch 9.2.7. Usually the big systems changes get kind of saved up and packed into the 0.5 patches, but it feels like lately the philosophy with the WoW team has been put out anything that's ready whenever it's ready. So it seems like if they have an idea and they can all agree on it, then they just kind of get it into the game as soon as possible. And in this case, there are 2 specific ideas that are parts of 9.2.7. So here's what's changing. The big one is that commodities on the auction house are going to become region-wide. So that means enchants, gems, herbs, or, leather, flasks, drums, potions. All of those commodities are going to become part of this region-wide auction house. So instead of having those things limited to your server's auction house, they're now going to be completely shared between all of NA and then separately all of EU. What this should hopefully do is kind of stabilize the prices and supply for those things so that people on outlier servers or really low pop servers have a more reliable, or well, just as reliable of a supply and sort of price environment for their flasks and potions and whatever for raid as everybody else. It means that those categories are much less vulnerable to price resetting and manipulation. It's no longer really realistic for one person to kind of like buy out one type of potion and then artificially keep them like 3 times as expensive as they should be. And it means that if you were considering transferring off of a dead realm just because of limited supply of raid consumables, then maybe you don't need to anymore. I think I'm all for this. It'll be interesting to see how it actually feels to sell things in this region-wide system because of the way the auction house works now with kind of like the last in, first out system, but then so many buyers, but also so many sellers. It's going to be interesting to see if it makes it easier or harder to sell things, assuming that you were doing so at a pretty fair market price. I won't pretend to fully understand the implications, but I feel like this is good news for more people than it is bad news for. And I feel like the people that it is bad news for are already kind of rich in gold in WoW, so they're probably going to be okay. And then the other change in 9.2.7 is the addition of a new chat channel for advertising services. So basically for advertising boosting to theoretically get all of that chat activity out of trade. The idea is that if those people don't have an excuse to be in trade chat anymore, they didn't say anything about actioning people advertising boosting services in trade chat, but maybe they'll get there eventually. But the idea is that all of that activity is in its own chat channel, and then you can join that channel if you want to buy boost and look at the advertisements. And then if you are like what I suspect is the majority of people that don't want to see advertisements for boosting, you can just leave the chat channel and never see it again. The thing this made me curious about is how many new players often the people that were most worried about being bombarded by these boosting advertisements. How often do they know how to leave chat channels? I know that's common knowledge for a lot of us, but I don't know if everybody knows that you can just type /leave space and then trade or general or whatever they call this new channel, and then you just never have to see it again unless you decide to type /join and then the channel again. It feels like common knowledge, but I imagine for a brand new player or somebody that's not spent a bunch of time in MMOs, that might not come naturally, so it's a useful trick if you want some peace and quiet. To my knowledge, there has been no word on when 927 could be. My instinct is whenever it's ready. There is some text in the auction house part of the post that indicates they're interested in stress testing this potentially in a couple of weeks, which would indicate to me that maybe this update will not be ready in time for Shadowlands Season 4 and will come out at some point after that, but before the Dragonflight pre-patch. But we'll see whenever it's ready. I do imagine, though, that nobody's very excited to break the auction house, specifically the consumables and stuff, like right on top of a new season, so it wouldn't surprise me if it comes later. In Dragonflight news this week, we had the Priest talent tree released. I am a Priest main, I'm very excited, but I will say I haven't looked through it fully yet, even though it's been out for a number of hours now, just because it's been busy today, and I want the time to really like sit down and then look at it, and then eat a snack, and then think, and then maybe like incubate an opinion. So it's on my to-do list, but the early bits that I heard sounded pretty promising. Something about Lightwell. I like Lightwells. And then sort of vaguely related to Dragonflight news, Blizzard has announced that they have acquired a game studio and then applied that remote workforce to the World of Warcraft project. So the studio is called Proletariat, and they're adding that workforce to help produce WoW content more quickly. Maybe I'm just getting spun by some good PR and buzzwords, but it feels initially like a promising thing. I think what I find most hopeful about this is that Blizzard sees WoW as a valuable enough thing to be investing money and investing, acquisitions into. They wouldn't be treating it like this if it wasn't profitable. And I, as a fan of WoW, like it to be profitable because then they can keep making it and then I can keep playing it. So that's a good sign that we're not going to get like Heroes of the Stormed this year. And then in my life this week, my kitty cat is continuing to recover. She's doing really well. Thank you so much for everybody that was asking about her. She has to go back to the vet for another recheck, and I'm hoping that the vet gives her the green light to get back on her crunchy food because that girl misses her crunchy food. It turns out that she really, really likes those lickable treats that come in like the little tubes. So she's had some things to look forward to this week. And questions. Barbara wants to know, do you think they are going to change the pet charms for Dragonflight, and should we start hoarding the charms before Dragonflight for rare and leveling stones? And there are a couple of questions along these lines. So we don't know. And our history, which is usually what I like to consult to make educated guesses, is inconsistent. Going from WoD to Legion and Legion to BFA, they use this kind of polished to shiny pet charm system. I forget when they added it, but they definitely did at least one pet charm conversion where they made it so that the new content was going to give polished pet charms and the old content would be shiny, and then they changed all of our pet charms over. I don't know if that was just like too unpopular for them to do again or what, but they didn't do it going from BFA to Shadowlands. Like to this day, you can get polished pet charms from BFA world quests and from Shadowlands world quests, and that's a big part of how I farmed my Flawless Amethyst Bobbleworm. So we don't know. When Dragonflight comes out, I am going to be on the lookout for it, and I will let you guys know loudly and often if there is any sign at all of them doing a pet charm conversion in Dragonflight. Based on the fact they didn't do one last time, though, I don't think they would. They might, but I don't think that they would. I think that it makes too many people angry, and it doesn't have enough of a tangible benefit. It's not that big of a deal to just let people make themselves crazy doing like 3 expansions worth of pet dailies for charms if they want. So I imagine they're probably going to leave it alone. And then Shane wants to know, sort of related to a question we talked about last week with which races should get druids, more or less which races would we add to shamans, and then what would their totems be? So ever since goblins got shamans, I have felt that who gets to be a shaman is completely arbitrary. The argument with goblins, as I recall back in Cataclysm, is that goblins are brilliant salespeople or something, and they made a deal with the elements. And sure, whatever. But last time I checked, all of the races have vendors, and I think they can all make deals. So if you ask me, everybody gets to be a shaman. You can just go to any of their like racial hometowns and crack off a piece of architecture and stab it in the ground and go, look, a totem. And that would be fine. I would actually, if you were gonna do that, and I don't see any good reason why not to, aside from like the art time, but you've got more developers. Make like an extra set of 100 totems, why not? It's not my budget. But you know what would actually be really cool? Would be undead shamans with like spooky, cobwebby totems. You know, they had that whole kind of like Tim Burton-y architecture that they added in Cataclysm for them. You could throw some of that in there. Give them rooms, give them chimneys, I don't care. What did the goblins trade to the elements? What was the deal there? Goblins get to throw lava bursts and the elements get what? Pollution? Are they using that for something? I don't know why that one made me have such feelings. Anyways, that's been the week. Thank you very much for watching. If you have a question for a news video, please pop it in the comments and include the word question. Appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.